Hello and welcome to the next episode of my channel where I'll be taking up the poem Birth by A.J. Cronin. Now, in this chapter, the protagonist, Dr. Andrew, had recently graduated from a medical college. He was practicing as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page in a small Welsh mining town called Blaneley. One night he was returning home when he found a man called Joe Morgan waiting for him outside his home. He had been there for more than an hour and he was very happy to see the doctor. He informed the doctor that he was needed at their home as his wife was expecting to deliver a baby after almost 20 years of marriage. Dr. Andrew asked him to wait for a few minutes so that he could get his medical bag and set out for Joe Morgan's house. When they reached Joe Morgan's house, Joe Morgan stopped outside the house and requested Dr. Andrew to go inside alone. Through a small staircase, the doctor reached the clean little house. Now, he found two women beside the patient. The name of the patient was Susan Morgan. So, inside there were two other ladies. One was Susan Morgan's mother, who was a tall, grey haired woman of nearly 70 years, and there was an elderly midwife. So, Susan's mother offered him a cup of tea. So Dr. Andrew sensed that maybe the reason why he was being offered a cup of tea was that they did not want him to leave and they were scared that he might leave, and so in order to make him stay, they offered him a cup of tea. Dr. Andrew was tired but still decided to stay. Now, as Dr. Andrew was waiting to check on the patient and to see what progress she was making, he could hear Joe Morgan's footsteps outside their house. Dr. Andrew got lost in his thoughts and he started remembering the evening he had spent that day with his girlfriend, Christine. Now, that evening was not particularly good because he had had a fight with her and now he was rethinking about his decision about marrying her. He started remembering all those people who had had a bad married life or relationship. So he was so lost in his thought that he lost count of time, and then something happened which took him out of his reverie. It was Joe Morgan's mother. She spoke to him and she told him that her daughter didn't want him to give her chloroform if it would harm the baby. That means they were too much desperate to have the baby and they didn't want to endanger the life of the baby anyhow. Dr. Andrew replied that it would do no harm. Just then he heard the midwife's voice. It was 3:30 and Dr. Andrew perceived that it was time for him to start working on the delivery. After a harsh struggle for an hour, the child was born. A perfectly formed boy, but unfortunately it was not breathing. A shiver of horror passed through Dr. Andrew. He had promised the family so much that he would, Joe Morgan had had so much hopes with him that he didn't even enter the house. He wanted to resuscitate the child, but the mother herself was in a very desperate state. So he decided to save the mother first. He gave the child to the midwife and turned his attention to Susan Morgan, the mother who was lying unconscious. Her pulse was low and her strength was reducing. After a few minutes of continuous efforts, he was able to finally stabilize her, and then his attention was now drawn towards the child. He asked for the child, but what had the midwife done? Presuming that the child was dead, she had shoved him under the bed. Dr. Andrew pulled out the child. His head was hanging loosely and his limbs seemed boneless. He concluded that the child was suffering from asphyxia pallida. That's a condition when a child is not able to get ample amount of oxygen. Dr. Andrew recalled a case he had seen in the Samaritan, that's a medical journal, and the treatment that was given. He asked the midwife to quickly get hot water and cold water in two bowls. He started plunging the child once into the icy water and then into the steaming bath alternatively. 15 minutes passed and nothing happened. Dr. Andrew was getting frustrated. He could see the unbelieving faces of the midwife and the old lady, but he continued his efforts. Dr. Andrew started rubbing the child's chest with a rough towel and thumping his little chest, trying to get breath into that limp body. Then, as if by miracle, the child's chest began moving. Dr. Andrew felt weak and nervous at the sight of life springing under his hands. He was so happy. He redoubled his efforts and the child was now breathing. Life came to the limbs, head became erect, the child's skin started turning pink, and suddenly the child cried. The midwife exclaimed with tears of happiness in her eyes, "Oh God, he has come alive." After so much frantic effort and success, Dr. Andrew felt weak and speechless. The old woman, that is Susan's mother, was still standing against the wall praying. Andrew went downstairs and told that he would fetch his bag later on. He found Joe Morgan still waiting with an anxious, eager face. Dr. Andrew gave him the happy news that both the mother and the baby were all right. Andrew was really happy and exclaimed, "Oh God, I have done something real at last." Now, why did he say this? He said this because as a doctor, he had fulfilled his job. He saved two lives. So he was very happy of, doing what he had done as a doctor. He did what he was supposed to do. So I hope you have understood the lesson. Do like it.